Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah.
Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina astafa. Alhamdulillahi adha'afa ma hamidahu jami'u khalqihi kama yuhibbuhu wa yardahu. Allahumma la uhsi thana'an alayk anta kama athnayta ala nafsik. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbana a'ti anfusana taqwaha wa zakkiha anta khayru man zakkaha anta waliyuha wa maulaha. Allahumma aghnina bil ilm wa zayyinna bil hilm wa akrimna bit taqwa wa jammilna bil afiyah. Allahumma tahhir qulubana minan nifaq wa a'malana minar riya. Allahumma faqihna fid din wa 'allimna al-Qur'an al-hakim. Rabbana zidna ilma. Amma ba'd. The story of a woman crying before Allah over the loss of her children. A certain woman used to give birth to children, but none of these children remained alive. All of them, after 6 months, became sick and died. In this manner, 20 of her children died and went to the graveyard. 20 children, one after the other, went that way. And this caused great sorrow. This caused great sorrow to rise up in her. During the latter part of the night, she rose up from her bed and fell down in sajda before her Lord, crying bitterly in sorrow as she poured out her heart in dua. Thereafter, she went to sleep. She saw in a dream herself wandering around the paradise. Subhanallah. She also saw a most beautiful mansion on which her name was written. From the beauty of the gardens of paradise and its splendor, she became beside herself with pleasure. The angels told her, "O woman, generally these bounties from Allah are acquired through the performance of ibadah and strenuous spiritual strivings. But because you were inactive in that respect and thus unable to reach that position, Allah sent those difficulties to you in the world during which you were patient. In return for that sabr, He grants you this paradise and this mansion." Then she saw her children there in paradise. She said, "O Lord, these children of mine were concealed from my sight, but they were never hidden from you. Here they are all present. O Lord, if for 1,000 years you keep me as I am today, I have no regret. Even if you should shed my blood, I will be satisfied. For these favors are much more than my patience." Subhanallah. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Allahumma ij'alna minas sabirin. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. The story of a child being thrown into a fire in the presence of his mother. A Yahudi king, a Jewish king, told the woman, prostrate before this idol, otherwise you'll be cast into a burning fire. She refused to prostrate before the idol and remained steadfast on her faith and on Tawheed. The king then grabbed the baby from her arms and threw the child into the fire. The mother was greatly distressed at this, and her faith, her iman, was greatly tested by the event. She came very near to death out of anxiety, but suddenly the little child started speaking from out of the midst of the fire. The little child started speaking from out of the midst of the fire, I am alive, and I have not died in this fire. O mother, come into this fire. I am in great pleasure, even though it appears I am in a flaming fire. O mother, come into this fire, so that you too may see Allah's miracle, and so that you too can see the comfort and ease of Allah's special bondsmen, even though in the eyes of the world they are in calamity. O mother, come in so that you too can see how the fire of Munroe became like a bed of roses for Ibrahim. Come and see. And how in the fire he found a springtime of roses and jasmine. At the time you gave birth to me, I feared it was death to me. But when I was born, I was released from a very narrow world. At the time you gave birth to me, I feared it was death to me. But when I was born, I was released from a very narrow world. A narrow world I was released from. And in my opinion, I had entered a beautiful world. However, after seeing paradise, this world would appear small and narrow like the mother's stomach. In this fire, I have seen another world whose every atom is a gift of life. O mother, come inside for the sake of your motherhood. Come in and see that this fire has not the effect of fire, for the mercy of Allah has converted it into a garden. O mother, you have seen the power of the Jewish dog. Now come in so that you may witness the power of Allah's grace. O mother, come inside and call others also to come, because my Lord had spread the tablecloth of his kindness inside. O Muslims, come inside, all of you, and experience the sweetness of Deen, which is sweeter than all other worldly pleasures. The mother then threw herself into the midst of the fire, and the child grabbed her by the arm. Then all the people around, they had jumped into the fire and experienced the grace of Allah. The Jewish king became ashamed and embarrassed. His plan proved to be against himself, because people began to long to jump into the fire, and in sacrificing their bodies, they proved to be true in faith. Whatever signs of insult or disgrace unworthy ones tried to put on the faces of saintly ones, these signs of disgrace will get stuck upon their own faces. The Jewish king then addressed the fire. What is wrong with you? You refuse to show mercy to those who worship you and grant refuge and safety to these sons of Tawheed while causing me disgrace and embarrassment. Who has practiced sorcery upon you? What is this? What has happened to your speciality of burning? The fire replied, O you disbeliever, I am that same fire. You come to me so that you may taste that same burning heat. My temperament and my true reality has not changed. I am a sword of Allah, but only cut with permission from Him. For this reason, when you feel grief and sorrow, beg His forgiveness from sins committed. Because sorrow only comes through His command. When through the blessings of seeking pardon, Allah becomes pleased, He will remove punishment. And when the command of Allah comes, sorrow also becomes pleasure, and a prisoner is released. Air, sand, water, and fire are all slaves of Allah, even though lifeless they may be. But in Allah's sight, they are alive, and for them to carry out His commands is not far-fetched at all. SubhanAllah. The story of the wind's destruction of the people of Nabi Hud, ala Nabiyina wa alayhi salatu wassalam. It is related that when a strong wind was sent against the people of Nabi Hud, alayhi salam, it is related that when a strong wind was sent against the people of Nabi Hud, alayhi salam, Nabi Hud, alayhi salam, drew a circle around those who believed in him. When the wind reached that circle, it blew softly and gently. People who were outside the line were torn to pieces by the wind. In similar fashion, Hazrat Shayban Ra'i, rahimahullah, rahmatullah alayh, used to draw a circle around his flock of sheep when he went for Jummah Salat, so that no wolf would carry off any sheep while he was away. Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah says, in this fashion, over the saints of Allah, the wind of death blows, like the morning garden breeze, soft and pleasant. In this fashion, over the awliya of Allah, the wind of death blows like the morning garden breeze, soft and pleasant. The fire did not burn Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was a chosen friend of Allah, Khalilullah. Now at the time of passing away, how could the fire have the courage to cause him harm? Similarly, the fire of desires and lust cannot burn the true followers of the deen. Similarly, the fire of desires and lust cannot burn the true followers of the deen, but it causes the irreligious ones to be brought to hellfire. Ma'adallah. The story of a mosquito's complaint to Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salatu wassalam. A mosquito came before Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam with its complaint. He said, O you whose kingdom stretches over men and jinn and over the air, please eradicate my misfortune and judge for me in justice. Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam asked, O you who searches for justice, against whom do you require a just verdict? The mosquito replied, my complaint is against the wind. The wind causes me great grief and harm. When I try to suck blood, the wind blows me away. When I try to suck blood, the wind blows me away. This is unjust and unfair. Nabi Sulaiman ala nabiyina wa alayhi salatu wassalam said, "O mosquito, Allah has commanded me not to give judgment until both parties to a dispute are present and given a fair hearing." The mosquito replied, "Undoubtedly, that is the right thing." Then Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam summoned the wind to appear before him quickly, because a complaint of injustice has been lodged against him. As soon as the wind received the summons, it came along, blowing quite strongly as it hastened to the presence of Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salatu wassalam. As soon as the strong wind arrived, involuntarily it forced the mosquito to be blown away. Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam called upon him, "O mosquito, wait a while. O mosquito, where are you going? Wait. I shall now judge between the two of you." The mosquito replied, "O king, my death lies in the existence of the wind. Its smoke makes my day black indeed. When the wind comes, I experience no ease and comfort. He destroys me by tearing me away from my place." Now Maulana Rumi, Nawwarallahu maraqidahum wa nafa'na bi ulumihim ameen, gives advice to the seekers after the Sufi path. He says, similar is the case of the seeker after Allah Ta'ala. When he has attained some nearness to him, to Allah, the closeness of Allah will cause his fleeing from evil. Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah says that for the nearness of Allah to be properly attained, it is necessary that one should become fully engrossed in serving him and be completely annihilated in him. That is a sign of being truly endowed with Allah's nearness. Hence, for as long as a person's nafs is alive and still has arrogance in it, it is impossible to acquire nearness to Allah. One will have to destroy his ego. One will have to destroy his ego. Even though in nearness to Allah there is lasting existence, but before this lasting existence, annihilation of the self is required. By annihilation is meant to make your own desires subject to the divine wishes and to make them a slave of Allah, surrendered to Him. How can that one be a servant to Allah who wants to keep his wishes above that of Allah? How can he be a servant to Allah who wants to keep his wishes above that of Allah? Lesson. This story teaches us that only after one has annihilated his nafs will be honored with sainthood. This annihilation is dependent upon the company of a saintly one, as Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah has said somewhere else. A nafs cannot be annihilated unless one has the shadow of a spiritual guide's guidance. Hence, hold fast unto the cloth of such a destroyer of nafs. My Shaykh and Murshid, Rahimahullah, says that here the phrase, hold fast unto, the reason for exhorting us to hold fast unto the spiritual guide is that sometimes the Shaykh may reprimand or punish a murid to correct him. At such times, if one is loosely connected with him, he will become offended and run away from him, which will be to his own detriment. As Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah states somewhere else, if at every rebuke of the Shaykh you become fed up, if at every rebuke of the Shaykh you become fed up, then how without rubbing can you become clean as a mirror? The story of the morning tree. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam initially used to lean upon the trunk of a date palm while delivering the khutbah in the masjid in Medina. Later, when the tree was cut to make way for the construction of a solid member, the date palm trunk began to cry out aloud like a child cries on being parted from its mother. It was deeply grieved that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would no more lean against it. Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah refers to this crying and mourning in these lines. Because of being parted from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the pillar of mourning began crying bitterly, just like a rational human being. Through this crying, the companions were surprised and astounded that this wooden trunk, in all its length and width, was crying so bitterly. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, "O pillar, what is it you desire?" He replied, "O Rasul of Allah, the sorrow of being parted from you is turning my life to blood. Being parted from you is causing my life to be burnt up inside me. And through this burning sorrow, why should I not cry and lament? After all, you are the life of the universe. I used to be your leaning place. Now you have parted from me, and in my place you have chosen another sitting place." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, "O blessed pillar, do you wish that I pray to Allah that you remain a green and fruitful tree, and that everyone of the east and the west should derive benefit from eating your fruits? Or do you wish something of the hereafter, and to always remain green and fresh?" The pillar of mourning replied, "O Rasulullah, I desire everlasting bounty from Allah." Now Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah gives advice. "O you unmindful and negligent ones, listen to this. You should take a lesson from the piece of wood. You being human are attracted to this temporary world and turning your back upon the hereafter, whereas that mourning pillar is giving preference to the everlasting bounties over temporary and passing pleasures." Thereafter, the wooden pillar of mourning was buried under the earth. Subhanallah. Thereafter, the wooden pillar of mourning was buried under the earth, so that, like mankind, it will be raised up on the day of resurrection for its reward. Note, the crying of this pillar of wood was one of the miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The story of the miracle of the gravel pebbles. Once Abu Jahl had some gravel pebbles hidden in his hand. He asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "If you are truly Allah's messenger, tell me what I have in my hand. You inform people of things from beyond the heavens. Therefore, it should be easy for you to tell me what is in my hand." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, "Shall I inform you of what is in your hand? Or should the things in your hand themselves tell you who I am?" Abu Jahl retorted, "I would like both things." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "There are 6 pebbles in your hand." Then at the command of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every one of the pebbles began to recite the kalima shahada. When Abu Jahl saw this miracle, he became so angry that he threw the pebbles hard on the ground and turned to go home. May his head remain covered in dust. The accursed one remained blind to the truth, and his eyes were like that of the accursed Iblis, who saw Nabi Adam alayhi salam as a mere being created of dust. He could not see the soul which was crowned with the crown of nubuwwat and prophethood. Of that he was completely unaware. Like that too was Abu Jahl, who could not see and recognize the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His comparison is like that of the shaitan, who could not see the crown of nubuwwat in Adam alayhi salatu wasalam's being. The story of the person crying over his dog. A dog was dying of hunger. A person was sitting beside it and busy crying over the dying of the animal. Someone saw this and asked him, "Why are you crying?" He replied, "This dog had some very beautiful qualities. Now it is dying of hunger and starvation." The man inquired, "Tell me, what have you got in that basket which you are carrying on your head?" He replied, "I have bread in it as food for my journey." The man inquired, "O you unjust one, why do you not feed the dog of the food for your journey?" He replied, "My love for this dog is not that much that I should feed him of my bread." The crying man said, "Bread is not acquired without payment of money, while the tears I shed in sorrow are acquired free of charge." The passerby replied, "May your head be covered in dust, that in your sight a piece of bread is better than tears. Tears are blood, which through sorrow and grief turn to water." Tears are blood, which through sorrow and grief turn to water. So, O foolish one, how can blood be equal in value to dust? Here bread is referred to as dust because corn grows from the earth. From this, Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah gives advice. "I am a bondsman of such a high-minded sheikh, Shamsut Tabrizi, rahimahullah, who would not exchange his existence for the world's greatest wealth and kingdom. The spiritual guide of mine will only exchange his body and soul for the acquisition of divine love. Hence one should become servants of the true walis of Allah Ta'ala, those who are filled with the spirit of Allah. If we become slaves of a worldly one, the same fate awaits us as that of the dog. If we become slaves of a worldly one, the same fate awaits us as that of the dog, for whom 2 tears of hypocrisy were shed, which proved to be of no use. People attached to material things cannot have ambitions because they are connected to dust. The saints of Allah, because they are connected to Allah, His arsh, and to the heavens, their spirit and ambition is higher than heavenly bodies. This is the special meaning of the verse Allah has inspired this humble servant with. All praise be to Allah, for that I say this, and in it there is no boasting. Then Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah says, "O you people, you have seen one type of tears which are less in value than bread. Now see another type of tears. See the tears of the saints. When my spiritual guide and murshid, Hazrat Shamsut Tabrizi, rahimahullah, cries, the effect of his sincerity and his pain causes the very heavens also to cry. And when my sheikh cries out of his great divine love, the very heavenly bodies tremble and shake, crying aloud, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Our Shamsud Tabrizi prays in great humility and earnestness. The grace of Allah comes flying towards broken hearts. The grace of Allah comes flying towards broken hearts which lay their complaints before Him and grants them the honor of acceptance. The story of Ayaz and those who were jealous of him. Ayaz, one of the close courtiers of King Mahmud, built a room in which he spread his old leather jacket and torn and tattered clothing which he wore before becoming a servant of the king. He used to keep the room locked at all times. Occasionally he used to enter this room alone, then looking at his torn and tattered clothes and his leather coat, he used to cry saying, Ya Allah, I am a son of a very poor family. I used to be in this torn and tattered state. This was my clothing of which today I am so ashamed that I keep it locked up. Not only will I not wear it in the presence of others, but I feel ashamed to even show it to them. In fact, now I consider it an insult to let others come to know of them. Then he used to address himself saying, O Ayaz, today you are a close courtier of the king. Do not be arrogant and proud of the shine and splendor you enjoy. For in reality, you are like these tattered clothing. The other courtiers and ministers of the king did not know what was in the room. Seeing him entering and leaving this room, they started forming all kinds of opinions and ideas about the room and its contents. One day, all the king's courtiers gathered in one place. They exchanged ideas as to why Ayaz was going into this room alone and why he was keeping the room locked at all times. The king loved him and considered him a very saintly person. They thought that Ayaz was stealing the king's wealth and hiding it in that room. They thought that if the king was to be informed of the treasure that was being kept in the room, then upon its discovery, Ayaz would lose his position of nearness to the king. Hasad, envy, jealousy. Secondly, if the king were to find the treasure, he would reward his informers. Hence, the result of their mutual consultation was that King Mahmud should be informed of their suspicions. A delegation from among them went to the king and told him, the court officials told the king that Ayaz has a room in which is hidden gold, silver, and carpets. He does not permit anybody else to enter into it and keeps the room locked at all times. The king listened to them and said, at midnight, I am going to inspect that room. You all should remain with me during the inspection. Whatever wealth we shall find therein will be divided amongst you people. The king further said, sorrow upon Ayaz, that in spite of so much respect and honor that he enjoys from us, he should involve himself in such a despicable act as to hoard gold and silver in secret. Whoever has discovered the life of divine love, for him it is ingratitude to become involved with beings other than Allah. The king was quite convinced. The king was quite convinced of the sincere love which Ayaz had for him and had full confidence in his honesty. However, he was actually jeering at the courtiers and making a fool of them. The king had no mistrust in Ayaz. He only tested the court officials and played the fool with the jealous ones. It was impossible that Ayaz could be untrue to the king because his faithfulness was unlimited. Ayaz was a king among kings. In fact, he was a king in the making, and it was only for protection against an evil eye that he was called Ayaz. King Mahmud was aware of his innocence and purity of life, and only to rectify those who envied him that he decided to inspect. Later in the middle of the night, the room was opened. When the court officials could not find anything, they said, the treasure must be under the ground. Hence the floor of the room was dug up, but still they found nothing. Everybody was quite surprised and distressed as to what excuse to give before the king, and worried as to how they were going to save themselves from their false accusations. Finally, in despair, they bit their hands and lips, and like women, they put their hands on their heads in shame. They all came before the king and said, whatever punishment you wish to mete out to us, we are prepared to accept. We deserve such punishment, but if you pardon us, it will be good, for you are King of grace. The king said, whatever judgment or verdict Ayad will give, that will be our judgment, because you people have tried to defame him and his good name and honor. Therefore I shall not pass any judgment. He said further, O Ayad, please pass judgment on these evil mongers, for you were innocent of their accusations and completely loyal. O Ayad, from your test and trial, numerous people are ashamed and full of grief. Now listen to Ayad's good fortune, his annihilated nafs and self, and his morals of love. Ayad said, O king, all sovereignty and rule is fitting for you. It is your kindness that this honor Ayad enjoys. I am a mere slave. How can a star show its light in the presence of the sun? Whether it is Venus or Mercury, or whether it is a shooting star, how can any one of these show their existence in the presence of the sun? The king hearing this became quite pleased. He replied, O Ayad, your high-mindedness has caused serfdom, abdiyat, to be granted light. And your light has speedily moved from down here to the stars. O Ayad, your bondage has reached that rank which is the envy of freedom. For you have done your duty to bondage and acquired the true life. To this Ayad replied, this high-mindedness is your gift and the result of the blessings of your company. Otherwise I am that slave of lowly rank who initially appeared before you in tattered clothes and leather jacket. O you listener, your tattered clothing is a clot of blood. O you listener, your tattered clothing is a clot of blood, and your leather jacket is the blood of menstruation. Apart from that, everything else you possess is a gift from Allah. O you muqatab, your tattered clothing is a clot of blood, and your leather jacket is the blood of menstruation. Apart from that, everything else you possess is a gift from Allah. In this story, Maulana Rumi alayhi rahmah is teaching the lesson of annihilation of the self, of the nafs. Ayaz was granted many favors by the king, and in spite of that honor, in order to save himself from arrogance and pride, he used to go and see his tattered clothing and his old leather jacket, and used to advise himself, O Ayaz, this is your reality, this is your haqiqat. Be not proud of your position of nearness to the king. This is your haqiqat and your reality. In the same way, the seekers after the Sufi path and the seekers after Allah Ta'ala should at all times keep their reality in front of their eyes. They should remember their humble beginnings, as Allah reminds us, we have created man from a cloth. We have created man from a cloth. Khalaqal insana min alaq. The origin of man is that he is created from the father's sperm and the mother's blood of menstruation. Apart from that, all man's inner and outer gifts are bounties from Allah. The asal of man is that he is created min nutfa, from the father's sperm and the mother's blood of menstruation. Apart from that, all man's inner and outer gifts are bounties from Allah. No matter what high rank Allah grants any man, the fact still remains that he is created from the sperm of his father and the menstrual blood of his mother. Khalaqal insana min alaq. The mere thought of this should be a protection and salvation against pride, arrogance, takabbur. Man should at all times keep this thought in mind that he was created in the womb of his mother. Then he was granted sight, hearing, reason, and understanding. Who was the one who granted these gifts? A certain saintly man was once crossing the road. He happened to accidentally bump against an arrogant, proud person. This was because the saintly man, due to his old age, was weak in eyesight. The arrogant one proudly asked him, "O blind one, can you not see? Do you not know who I am?" The saintly man replied, "I know full well who you are. If you want, I shall explain to you who you are." He said, "All right, tell me." The saintly man said, "Life consists of 3 times: past, present, and future. As for the past, you are your father's unclean sperm mixed with the menstrual blood of your mother. As for the present, your abdomen contains feces and it is filled with urine. And as for the future, you'll be a stinking, rotten corpse that will be buried in the graveyard." Wow, kya jawab. Pride and arrogance, takabbur, ma'adallah. Pride and arrogance, takabbur, is quite common against foolish, stupid ones. But if one just uses his reason, he will discover that arrogance is definitely not befitting for man. In the Hadith Qudsi, Allah says, "Al-kibriya uridai." Pride is my covering. Pride is my covering. And whosoever enters into it, I shall break his neck. That's not for him. Allah is al-mutakabbir. Allah is akbar. Al-kibriya uridai. Pride is my covering. And whosoever enters into it, wants to go into my covering, into pride, I shall break his neck. Allahumma fadhna minhu. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. I think we have come basically tomorrow, inshallah. We should finish the book tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu wa la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruk wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamun alal mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Social expectation drowns us all inside. What you have should be what I want, 'cause what I have just ain't alright. The clothes I wear, the way I comb my hair, how I live, oh I don't care. This is who I am, this is me.